Today, you're going to tackle object-oriented programming, or OOP. You're also going to hone in your OOP skills while learning about CSV files as well as UUID to create universally unique IDs. I'm going to break it all down for you guys while taking you through a mini OOP project. What is the task, you may ask? Well, it's to build an inventory management system. All right, Josh, what's this system gonna do? Well, it's gonna allow us to add items and manage a shop's inventory and save that data to CSV files and manipulate that too. If you've been wanting to learn more about OOP in Python, this video is for you. Welcome back to yet another episode of Code with Josh, and for obvious reasons, that's me. Guys, do me a favor, click the like button and subscribe if you're ready to learn object-oriented programming, as that really does help me out in the YouTube algorithm. And I made for you guys my handcrafted Python and Git starter pack I give to all my students on their first day of class. It's the first link in the description. Absolutely free. Get your copy that you can use in this mini project to help you out. All right, now to kick things off, I want to break things down my style. Nice and easy. I want to do a high level overview of objects and classes real quick and break down our project. All right, let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, before we dive into the project, let's break down objects and classes and give you an overview of object-oriented programming. So a high-level overview, my version of a high-level quick overview, is right here you can see I have three completely different unrelated items. I have shoes, phone, and a drink, right? Now I want you to view these as a class, right? If I ask you for your phone, you would give me your phone. You know what I'm talking about. But if we break things down, what kind of phone do you have? What drink do you have? What kind of shoes do you have? Those could be objects. Right, so if I take a phone, I could have an iPhone, a Samsung, an Android. A drink could be water, coffee, tea, right? So drink is my class, and then these could be objects of my class. So if we take a class of shoes, objects could be Adidas, Nike, New Balance. Now we see this object. What if I take this a step further? Now every object, it can do different things, right? Because an object has its own actions. Now these actions are known as methods, and literally a method is a function in a class. That's it, okay? And then you can also see that our object has attributes, and these attributes are just properties. And literally, well, I said property in a class here. Okay, I need to fix that. A property is literally just a variable in a class. Now guys, last week we did an OOP mini project too. And last week I taught you guys how that kind of worked with some JSON. I'm going to link that right here. If you missed it, head over there and check that out after this video, as I introduced JSON there, and in here we're doing a bit more. Let's break down our project. Now we're doing like an e-commerce manager, and this is our overview of the project. We have an inventory item class. Now this is the class that's responsible for each item in our store's inventory, and it's going to hold the relevant information about that. So you can see an item ID, a name, a quantity, a price, a unique SKU number, right? Every item has a SKU number or ID. Am I saying that right? You let me know, okay? And that refers to that specific item. So our items need that. Our next class is going to be the inventory manager. Now this is responsible for all the actions that we can do. So I can load my CSV file with our inventory. I can save a new CSV. I can add items. I can delete items all to that CSV file, right? I can display all my items within the file, and then I can even filter out the items by price, which is really cool, and I'm going to touch on that. Now, in order for this to work, okay, everything is going to be controlled by a main function, just like in the last episode, all right? Check that out. We want to control everything as like a main or a parent function. This will also just be our basic UI within our terminal. And this creates and stores our object. So I'm going to create a manager for my inventory manager, and I'm going to call upon him when I'm inside this main function to use all these methods we make. All right, this is really cool. I'm going to briefly touch on CSV and how we can use CSV in Python. And today, you're going to learn how to use CSV. Now, CSV means comma separated value. And you've seen this, especially if you've worked with Python or data analytics or, just other things. Like I've seen CSV files even before I got into coding. Okay, today we're going to talk about 4 functions or classes within this module. Okay, the first one I'm going to use is dict reader. This is really our dictionary reader. This allows us to read data from a CSV file in dictionary format. Okay, it also automatically performs all those type conversions we need, and it's going to interpret the first row in the CSV file as the header automatically for us. That's really useful. The opposite of dict reader is dict writer. So I can write in a dictionary. Okay, and you can see here a code format for both of these. It takes a file as well as field names. I'll touch on that. Okay, but this allows us to write in a CSV file in dictionary format. Now, field names, this is a list, and this is really the title to each column that you have, the header. All right, I'm going to give it a list. That's the title to the column. And this pairs with the initial dict reader class that we used. Now, in order to write in a dictionary in a CSV file, I'm going to use write header and write rows. Now, just like the name of this function, it does the same thing. Write header, hence I can write the name of the column, and then write rows, okay, I can write each row of data in the CSV file. I'll flash back to this in a bit. And then finally, how is our system going to interact with each other? What's the breakdown, okay? I want you to imagine this as the manager, the parent. And remember, I addressed the main function. This is our parent. The manager is going to have the ability to add an item, right? Adding to the item class. And then the manager is also going to be able to control the entire inventory system. This is the inventory manager class. So the manager has the ability to load CSV, all these actions here. The system itself is the one that communicates to the item, and it can delete an item, right? It can filter an item, it can display. These two are communicating, right? But ultimately our parent is the leader. All right, guys, if there's any questions, here's the blog. Head on over, check out the blog. I have weekly content coming out there. Do me a favor, I'm going to jump into VS Code, right? If you're liking this video so far and you're getting value from it, drop me a comment and click that like button, all right? I'm about to jump into VS Code. That helps me out. Over to VS Code. Here you can see I'm already in VS Code and I've dropped in the template data. Now pause the video. This saves time for the purpose of this, right? But everything I laid out in the slides for you guys is right here. I have an inventory, I have an item class, I have a manager class, and then I have the parent function, the manager itself, right? Pause the video and get ready to go. Okay, I'm gonna kick things off with our item itself. Okay, now this item is just really storing data about the item. So it's going to have an item ID like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to have the name of the item. It'll have the quantity, the price, as well as the SKU ID number, the SKU number. This needs to be a unique number. So it's going to be generated on the fly. I'm not actually going to create a parameter for that. Going forward, I'm going to create a property for each of these, item ID, name, etc. Cool. And that brings us to our last one, right? I want that SKU number. Now this, I need to generate a unique ID. So Python has a built-in module called UUID, or Universally Unique ID. And this is popularly used in like SQL databases to give each item its own unique identification number. This is very straightforward. So I'm actually going to use this here. Let's go to the top. I'm going to import UUID. Okay, so I'm going to come down here now, and the value to this will be generated on the fly. So it's going to be a string tapping into my module, and for our purposes, I'm going to use UUID4, that function. This will generate that for us. Now I'm using 4 because this is the most basic version, but this is the most universally used version, okay? It's going to use Python to randomly generate numbers and letters, put that in a string format for me, okay? 90% of the time for a lot of the work we're doing is UUID4. That's why it's going to be put inside here. Other times you can read the documentation. I'll try and link that below. So I have the inventory item. Now I want to display all this information about this item. So really all we're going to do here is I'm going to print off, I can do an F string, okay? And let me drop in some text. There we go. I have my item ID, the name of the item, the quantity, and the price. I'm rounding down the price, okay? And here's the syntax for that. You notice that I'm not actually adding the SKU ID. I could. It's going to be in the CSV file, right? It's really to keep track of that on the back end of it, which I'll show you guys later. Now that we have the inventory item completed, right? This is one item in our inventory. I now need a manager to process and handle that. That brings us into our inventory manager class. The first thing we can do here is inside init, I'm really going to give it one thing, okay? It's going to take a file, like a CSV file, right? Then I'm going to create two properties for this. I'm going to create a file, and this is actually going to be equal, well, you guessed it, our file. I'm going to create our inventory, and this can be just a list, and that's really all we need to get started. Okay. Now, the first thing we want to do is I want to load any pre-existing inventory. Okay. So in order to keep track, to add new items, remove items, the first thing we're doing as a manager is loading in our current warehouse, our current store of items. Then we can manipulate or change that. So to load our inventory, I'm going to go to the top. This is where we're going to use the CSV module. Okay, now loading inventory. I'm going to do a few things here. Let's say with open. Okay, now what do I want to open? I would like to open my file. I want to read this file. That's all I'm doing. I'm loading, I'm reading the CSV file. Okay, cool. As what? Give it a nickname, call it file. Now it's time to create a reader to actually read this, and we can use dict reader. What does this take? Well, it takes a file that we want to read. I can now take my list, right? That's self-inventory, that's our list. And inside here, I'm actually going to give like a comprehension, right? I want to go through each item in the CSV file, take each item, put it in this list, okay? So first things up, let's take our object, our class, inventory item, right? We made this up top here. And I need to drop in some data here. So I'm going to speed things up. Let me type through it. Okay, so here you go. This is really long. So I'm gonna zoom in here. Okay. Now you can see I have one, two, three, four items. These are the four arguments. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are going 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, in Python, dictionary key unlocks a value. So right here, because I'm using dict reader, it's converting the CSV file to dictionary format. To unlock those CSV file values, I'm saying dictionary, which is row, and then I'm giving it the key of item value, right? Because this is a comprehension, this is one item. For every row in my entire reader, right? That's how we're going through that, right? That's great. Okay, that's all we had to do there. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to address one thing. Let's say try. Okay, I should be trying to do that in case anything happens, because an error could happen, and it's basically if I don't have that, right? So file not found error. I'm just going to print off no file, ... right? And it'll create one, okay? Awesome, we have our load inventory done. Okay, I'm gonna keep those marked for now. Let's come down here. I'll dabble around with save inventory later. We've loaded it, let's jump into add, right? How can I add an item to this? Okay, so more specifically, I need to ask a few things. I need the name of the item that I'm trying to add, the quantity of the item, and the price. This is like the new object that we're making. I can create an object, right? So once I have this new information I need, I can create an object, right? I have name, I have quantity, and I have price. Now you may be wondering, okay, Josh, you're actually missing one, because if we go up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. What is item ID? Well, I want Python to automatically generate that for me. So every time I add a new item, it's incrementing, it's doing that for me. So let me do that so there's no confusion down the line. At the top of my manager, I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to say next item ID. Initially, that can be just equal to 0. Okay, that's really just my counter. Okay, right here in our list, right? So after I add an item to the list, I want to take that next item ID, right? And I'm going to say, hey, that's now equal to the length of my current list, which is inventory, but we're going to add 1 onto it, and that'll keep counting for us. Now down here, while we're adding an item, well, you guessed it. Really, the first one, I'm just going to say next item ID. That gives us those 4. And I've also spelled quantity wrong, so let's drop that in. Okay, let's take our list, so inventory, let's append. What do we want to append? The item that we just made, the object that we just made. I can take my counter that we have and we can add 1, increment that by 1. And then I now want to take my item and I want to save it to my CSV file. So we need to make the save method. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to say save to CSV file. I'm leaving a note, a reminder to myself of what I need to do now and come back to, right? This is really useful. It's called pseudocode. You should be using pseudocode as like a note-taking process to help you. If I come up here now to save inventory, okay, we're going to do kind of the same thing. I'm going to say with open. Okay, this is great. What do we want to open? I want to open my file that we have. And what do I want to do? This time, I want to write in my file. Now, to prepare it, I'm going to say new line, and this is just equal to an empty string. Okay, this is good practice, giving it a new line right there. And don't forget to give it your nickname as a file. Call it whatever, applesauce, airplane, doesn't matter, okay? File for me. Now remember, I need a list of field names, okay? And these are like the header titles, okay? The column titles. Gonna drop those in there. I'm gonna create a person to write. I like to think of them as people. It's just easier to process. You're telling a story. Okay, we're using that dict writer class. So I have a writer, and we're using dict writer, our dictionary writer. I'm giving it my file. Then remember our field names. Okay, that's the title we're gonna give it. What are the other 2 methods, the functions that we learned with CSV? What did I talk about? Header, rows, remember? Let's check this. We can say writer.write header, right? That was the first stage. That doesn't take anything. And then we can take write and we can write some rows. Excuse me, there's more than 1 row. Okay, what does this take? Well, it's going to take an iterable, okay? So I'm going to give it a dictionary. Okay, let me drop in some key value pairs. All of these are the key value pairs in my new dictionary comprehension. Right? I'm tapping into my item, which is going to be my object, and then we're tapping into the property of each object. Right? Now, in order for this to work, really all we need is I can come down here and say for every item in my entire inventory list. Okay, I'm going to go through and we're going to tap into that. That's perfect. That's really all we needed to save. Okay? Inside add item, let's replace our CSV file. How can we call this method here? Well, save inventory. Is that going to work? No, absolutely not. It's a method. Remember, self.save inventory. But once again, did I spell that right? No. Okay, there we go. All right, 3 more to go. How can we display all of our inventory, everything in the CSV file? Well, first thing I'm going to say is if not self inventory. So this means if it's empty, right, what do I want to do? I'm just going to print off here, let's say empty ... okay? Else, then we can do something else. For every item inside my list, my inventory, okay, what would I like to do with each item? Well, I can take that item, right? And this item is now an object, so I'm going to say display info. Display info is coming from our method right here. I'm going to call this method on each object. Great, display info is done. The question becomes, if you know how to add an item, right, how can we delete an item? Pause the video, think about that. How can we remove the item? What information do we need? What could we use to do this? The easiest way to do this right now for the video, I'm going to say item ID. Remember, each item will have an ID like 1, 2, 3, 4. I can enter a number to delete. It removes it from the CSV file. Okay, so I can delete that item by ID. We're going to take our list, and I'm going to actually create a comprehension, okay? Now, this isn't the most optimized way, because if you have a really big CSV file, we shouldn't do this, right? But for a smaller access and to get this working for how we want it, this is great. So this improves your comprehension ability as well. What do I want to do? Well, I'm going to have an item in this list, and I'm going to say for every item in my inventory. Okay, so that's currently just the same exact list. That's not doing anything. So let's create a condition here, and I can say if the current item ID is not equal to the item ID that I'm looking for. I want to add it to the list. So this is going to create a new list of every single item except the item that has this ID. Then we can just tap into and I can save my inventory. Okay, it's going to be a new inventory now. We're saving that. Awesome. Okay, our last one. How can we filter? Okay, so I want to enter a price like $10. And everything over that or under that, I want to see what's available in my stock, in my store. Okay, so then for this one, we must need, well, a price. What's the max price the item can be that we're looking for? And I'm just going to return a new list of all the items that meet our criteria. So item for item in self inventory. If the current object's price is less than or equal to our max price that we've given it, then we got it. Okay, that's it. Amazing, guys. Our two classes are done. It's time to jump into the main, the parent function, right? This is what's going to be controlling everything. Now, I've already prepared some text. This is just the UI design. You can design it how you guys want, all right? Let me know, okay, which part of this was the most challenging to comprehend and which part did you guys enjoy? All right, so here you can see my main function is kind of set up. Just previewed this for you guys, that's all. All right, we have our loop because I want to repeat my system. And then here's just the options we have. Okay, add item display, filter, delete, save, and exit. Right, the easiest way to meet each of these is just through a conditional statement. Okay, well, just one long if, elif, else. Okay, outside here I have my if name main, and we're calling our main function. Okay, now we just need to go through and program each step. Okay, so let's start with number one. What do I want to do? Add an item. What information do we need to collect from a user, right, to add an item to our database? I need a name. Okay, so we can say like enter name. We can say here enter amount of items. We need a price. And that's really it. Now I need to add my items. So up here at the top of main, I actually need to create an object. So store equals like inventory, not item, but inventory manager. Okay. Now I do need to give a file to this. So I haven't created one yet. I'm going to do that here. I'm just going to call this inventory.csv. Okay, so now that I have that, the first thing we should do is load the CSV. It doesn't matter if it's empty, right? I need to catch up my data. If there's anything there, it's going to bring it in. So I'm just going to say store.load inventory. Okay. Coming down here, I can now say store.add item, right? What do I want to add? Well, I want to give it the name. I want to give it my quantity, and then we can give it our price. Now notice that all of these are strings, okay? And that's okay, because up here inside, add item, right? I'm creating an object, and then all of these are being converted right here while we're loading. Well, actually, no, let me address that now. They're not being. So the pre-existing ones are being converted. That is great. So I'm actually glad I caught that. Going down here, let me jump in here. Quantity is going to be an integer, okay? And then our price can be a decimal, so we're going to float that number. Number two, display all items. Well, this one's straightforward. All I have to do here is I'm going to take my store. We're going to display, is it called display inventory? Right, that's what we called it. There we go, display inventory. Okay, option three, we want to filter by the price. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a number. So this will be our float input, enter a max price. I'm going to then create a filter items. This is going to be whatever I get back. So store.filter items. We're going to give it our number that we're looking for. So that's going to return something for me, right? Let's just print off something nice. Here's what I'm searching for. I'm going to say for every item in my filter items, right? Because that returns a list to us. Let's just say item.displayInfo. That's the method that we created in the item class. This should be item. Brilliantly done, okay? Number four, we need to delete an item, okay? So let's collect the item ID, right? That's just how I'm deleting the item. I can create it, I can say delete item by ID, we can give it the ID number that we just collected, print off that we deleted the item, great, okay? Number five is just allowing us to save our inventory. So I'm just gonna say save inventory, print off here, saved to CSV, okay. Option 6, how do we break? How do I end my program? Well, I kind of just told you. I'm gonna make something nice like goodbye, ... Then we can just say break here, okay? Else, I'm gonna say like we don't have that option dropped in there. Wow, guys, that's great. You're done. All right, I think, let's check. We have our main function, all of our options programmed out. Okay, great. Each method, right, I'm creating my item object here. I'm adding an item. We're writing inside our CSV. We're reading our CSV. Oh, 2 equal signs, that's an issue. Okay, cool. Run your code. Cool. Okay, so it says no file. I don't actually have a file yet. Okay, so that's fine. That's created me a file. Let's say add item. Okay, so 1. Enter the name. Let's say airplane, because I want an airplane. Amount of items. 1. Price. How much is an airplane on? 10 million. Okay, so I added 1 item. Let's add 1 more item for the purpose of this. Let's say a phone. Let's say 1 phone. Let's say 500. Okay, we're done. All right, let's display everything. Look at that. So we have now displayed some items here, okay? Now remember, I introduced a universally unique ID, UUID. That's not being displayed here. Let me show you that. If you open Explorer over here in Inventory, you can see, voila. Right here are our SKU numbers. These are the UUIDs that Python is generating, okay? It's really hard to replicate these. That's why we have them here. Okay, if I continue on this process, let's say number 3, I'd like to filter out the items. What's the max price? Let's say 1,000. That means my airplane won't be there. You can see it's filtering out, it's giving me my phone. Oh, that's great, guys. Let's exit. Look at that. Goodbye. And there you have it, guys. Not only have you done another object-oriented programming project, right, a mini OOP project with me here on Code with Josh, but you've also been introduced to the Python CSV module, as well as universally unique IDs, or the UUID module. That's great. Well done. If you guys got value from today's video, do me a favor, click the like button and subscribe if you haven't, as I have daily content coming out for you guys to help you get further in your Python journey. And remember, if you guys want my handcrafted Python and Get Starter Pack, it's absolutely free. It's the first link in the description below. Head on down there and get your copy of my handcrafted Python and Get Starter Pack. Guys, next week is a big week. I have a big surprise planned. Stay tuned, as this is going to help propel you through Python in that journey and break things down for you. Until next episode of Code with Josh, I will see you guys then.